Here's a secret most people don't dare to say out loud. More than half of Americans over 60 are still enjoying active sex lives. Yet if you turn on the TV, scroll social media, or even sit around family gatherings, you'd think romance after retirement simply vanishes. Society acts like passion expires with your driver's license renewal. But that's a lie. And it's a dangerous one because it silences the stories of millions of seniors who are still deeply in love, still curious, still laughing, and yes, still very much alive in the bedroom. Now let me ask you, why do you think this silence exists? Is it embarrassment? Is it younger generations not wanting to imagine their parents or grandparents as romantic beings? Or is it simply that no one has ever created a safe space where seniors can say, yes, intimacy still matters to me? Think about it. If you're over 60, you've lived, you've sacrificed, you've raised families, you've worked decades. Why would you suddenly lose the right to companionship, affection, or desire? And before we dive deeper, I need to stop right here and say something important. If what you're hearing already strikes a chord, don't just hit like, and every hype pushes senior voices to the front, so more people can finally hear what has been kept quiet for too long. If you believe seniors deserve their stories told, take a second now. Hype this video. It might feel small, but it's actually a huge way to make sure conversations about love, intimacy, and dignity after 60 don't disappear into silence again. Because the truth is, retirement is not the end of passion. For many, it's the beginning of an entirely new chapter. The question isn't whether romance after 60 exists, it's whether we are brave enough to talk about it openly, without shame and without apology. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. Let me introduce you to someone unforgettable, Marlowe. She's 67 years old, living in a quiet suburb of Arizona. On paper, her life looked settled. A widow of nearly a decade, she spent her mornings tending to her garden, afternoons volunteering at her local library, and evenings mostly alone with a stack of novels. From the outside it seemed peaceful. But Marlowe carried a quiet ache she never talked about, the belief that romance, passion, and connection were chapters permanently closed in her life story. When her friends urged her to try online dating, she laughed. At my age, what am I supposed to write? Love's knitting and early bedtimes. She dismissed the idea with humor, masking the vulnerability underneath. Dating apps felt foreign, almost designed for people decades younger. And in her mind, love had already had its moment. She had her memories. That was enough. Or so she told herself. Then one evening something shifted. A neighbor insisted she join a community dance class. Ballroom dancing of all things. Marlowe nearly rolled her eyes. She hadn't danced since her wedding, and her late husband had 2 left feet anyway. But she showed up, reluctantly, in a simple pair of flats, expecting nothing more than sore knees and some awkward small talk. But here's where her story surprises us. In that room, surrounded by seniors swaying to old melodies, she felt something she hadn't in years. A spark. Not necessarily romantic at first. It was a spark of belonging, of laughter, of play. When she stumbled through a foxtrot, the man partnered with her, another senior named Daniel, chuckled and said, "I'm just as bad. Let's make fools of ourselves together." That moment, light-hearted, human, and unpolished, cut through the wall she had built around herself. Slowly, the dance classes became less about steps and more about connection. She noticed her cheeks hurt from smiling. She caught herself looking forward to Thursday nights. And with Daniel, she found herself opening up, not with the pressure of dating, but with the simple joy of shared moments. A hand on her back, a shared laugh, the rhythm of 2 people moving in sync. It wasn't just dancing. It was rediscovering intimacy without labels, without expectations. And here's the important lesson tucked inside Marlowe's journey. Love and companionship after 60 don't always begin with a grand plan. Sometimes they start with small acts of saying yes. Yes to trying something new. Yes to showing up even when you feel silly. Yes to allowing yourself to be seen. Not as a widow, not as a retiree, but as a whole human being who still deserves warmth and closeness. Now pause for a moment and think about your own life. Have you ever dismissed an opportunity because you thought it was too late for you? Have you brushed off something that could have opened a door simply because it felt unfamiliar or even embarrassing? Let us know in the comments. Your story could be the encouragement someone else needs right now. Marlowe's story may sound special, but it isn't rare. It's the quiet truth of millions of seniors across the country. People rediscovering connection, sometimes where they least expect it. And if Marlowe could find joy in a dusty Arizona dance studio, maybe the next chapter of your own story is closer than you think. Truth number 1. Myth versus reality of sex after 60. When it comes to sex and relationships after 60, the world is flooded with myths that create shame, silence, and unnecessary doubt. These myths don't just mislead, they rob seniors of the joy of connection. So let's break them down one by one, and reveal the truth that rarely gets spoken aloud. Myth number 1. Desire disappears. This is one of the biggest lies society tells us. Desire doesn't vanish with age. It evolves. At 25, desire might be all about fire and urgency. At 65, it often becomes more about curiosity, closeness, and savoring the moment. Many seniors say intimacy actually feels deeper because it's no longer rushed or hidden behind insecurity. Instead of chasing youth, they're embracing presence. The truth is, desire matures the way we do. It slows down, but it also grows roots, offering a richness that younger people often overlook. Myth number 2. It's all about performance. We live in a culture obsessed with measuring success in numbers. Speed, stamina, frequency. But after 60, performance stops being the headline. What matters most is intimacy, comfort, laughter, and shared moments of tenderness. For many, the pressure of doing it right fades, replaced by a focus on connection. One senior couple recently described it perfectly. In our 20s, sex was an Olympic sport. Now it's like jazz. Unpredictable, playful, and soulful. When performance isn't the goal, there's more freedom to experiment, talk openly, and simply enjoy. Myth number 3. Health issues end romance. Yes, bodies change. Medications, arthritis, menopause, or surgery can all impact intimacy. But change doesn't equal ending, it means adjusting. Couples discover new ways of being close. Softer touch, longer foreplay, or even simply lying together and holding hands. Medical advances, from treatments for erectile dysfunction to therapy for vaginal dryness, are breaking barriers too. And beyond the physical, many find that affection and intimacy actually expand in creativity. Romance may not look identical to the past, but it absolutely does not have to disappear. Now let's pause here. Which of these myths have you personally encountered? Maybe you've believed one yourself, or maybe someone around you has tried to put that stereotype on your shoulders. Have you faced one of these myths yourself? Share in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else to step out of the shadows of silence. Because here's the truth. Aging does not erase your right to desire, to touch, to laugh, or to explore intimacy in your own way. What it does erase is the pressure to conform to unrealistic standards. After 60, sex becomes less about proving something, and more about experiencing something real, something human, something deeply yours. But here's the twist. While many seniors embrace these truths, there's another part of the story that most don't see coming. It's not about the myths. It's about the surprising challenges that blindside people stepping back into romance later in life. And trust me, this is the part no one warns you about. Truth number 2. The surprising challenges. Now, here's the part almost nobody talks about. The challenges that come with pursuing love and intimacy after 60. These aren't the myths we've already broken. They're real, modern obstacles that catch many seniors off guard. First, let's talk about dating apps. In 2025, they're no longer just for 20-somethings swiping in coffee shops. Platforms like Silver Singles and Our Time are growing fast, with thousands of new sign-ups every month from people over 60. But here's the twist. For many seniors, this world feels like stepping into a foreign country without a map. Swiping left and right can feel superficial, and scammers often target older adults who are simply looking for companionship. The opportunity is real. You can meet someone you'd never have crossed paths with otherwise, but it requires patience, digital literacy, and, most of all, boundaries. And that leads to the second challenge. Social stigma. Even in 2025, society still acts uncomfortable when seniors openly discuss intimacy. Families change the subject, media rarely shows it, and sometimes even peers whisper as if romance after 60 is somehow inappropriate. This silence forces many to bury their needs, even though they deserve to be voiced. But the truth is, breaking stigma starts with brave individuals willing to tell their stories, just like Marlowe. Which brings us to something few expect: rising cases of STIs among older adults. According to the CDC, infections among people over 60 are climbing. Why? Because many seniors, after decades in monogamous marriages, re-enter dating without thinking about protection. Doctors rarely bring it up, and older adults often assume it's an issue only for younger generations. But intimacy after 60 is real, and so are the health responsibilities that come with it. Staying safe is not about fear, it's about freedom. Freedom to enjoy connection without putting yourself or your partner at risk. For Marlowe, these challenges became very real. After years of being married, she had to relearn what boundaries looked like. Saying no when something felt rushed. Having honest conversations about protection and health. Asking questions she never imagined she'd be asking in her late 60s. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And in doing so, she discovered that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier, more respectful relationships. Now I want to turn this to you. Would you ever try a dating app at 65 or 70? Tell us below. Your comment might just encourage another senior who's afraid to take that first step into this new world of connection. Because here's the truth. The challenges are real, but they're not deal breakers. They're simply part of navigating love in a new era. One where seniors are no longer invisible, but powerful enough to write their own rules. Truth number 3. The hidden joys. We've talked about the challenges, but now let's turn the page. Because the other side of the story is filled with hidden joys that often surprise seniors when they rediscover love and intimacy after 60. These aren't scraps of what once was. They're brand new gifts that come only with time, wisdom, and perspective. One of the greatest surprises is how emotional intimacy deepens. In youth, passion often runs fast, fueled by urgency and novelty. But later in life the pace changes. It becomes less about performance and more about presence. Couples find themselves enjoying long conversations before, during, and after intimacy. The rush to get it right fades, replaced by the simple joy of being together without judgment. The connection feels thicker, more grounded, like roots instead of fleeting sparks. Another joy. Humor and playfulness return in ways many never expected. Seniors often laugh more in bed than they ever did in their 20s. Why? Because the pressure's gone. Awkward moments become funny, not embarrassing. A slip, a groan, or a misstep turns into shared laughter. That laughter doesn't break intimacy, it deepens it. It reminds couples that love isn't about flawless execution. It's about creating moments you both cherish. And perhaps the most liberating joy. The freedom of no longer chasing perfection. For decades, many people lived under the weight of expectations. How their bodies should look, how often they should perform, how romance should unfold. After 60, those chains fall away. Romance becomes real again. Messy, tender, human. It's no longer about impressing someone. It's about showing up authentically, scars and all, and being loved not in spite of them, but with them. This is exactly what happened with Marlowe. She began her journey convinced that romance was over. That intimacy belonged to her past. But through laughter on the dance floor, through conversations with Daniel that stretched late into the night, she realized the truth. Love hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed its rhythm. What once felt like a sprint now felt like a gentle, endless dance. The joy wasn't in proving she could still keep up. The joy was in slowing down, feeling safe, and being seen. And here's where the advice becomes actionable. Don't underestimate the power of allowing yourself to embrace joy again. Try something new with your partner. Laugh when it doesn't go as planned. Stop chasing the impossible standard of perfection, and instead focus on presence, humor, and authenticity. These are the things that make intimacy after 60 not just possible but beautiful. Because the hidden truth is this: the joys of later life romance aren't a consolation prize. They're a reward, a richness that only comes after years of living, learning, and letting go. Truth number 4. Building lasting connection. So far we've talked about rediscovering intimacy and uncovering hidden joys. But how do you actually build a lasting connection after 60? One that doesn't just spark but endures. The answer lies in 3 powerful shifts: communication, shared experience, and intentional care. First, talk openly. This may sound simple, but for many seniors, it's the hardest step. After decades of being told intimacy is private or off-limits, voicing your desires, fears, or frustrations can feel uncomfortable. But silence is what builds distance, while openness builds bridges. A simple sentence like, "I'd like us to try holding each other more before bed," or "I sometimes worry about whether I can keep up," can transform the way partners connect. Vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's an invitation for closeness. When communication is free of shame, intimacy deepens in ways no physical act can replace. Second, experiment together. At this stage of life, routine is comfortable, but it can also become confining. Trying new activities together, whether it's ballroom dance, yoga, cooking classes, or even traveling to places you've always dreamed of, rekindles excitement. These shared adventures spill over into intimacy, because they remind you both that discovery isn't behind you, it's still ahead. Novelty isn't just for the young. It's a secret ingredient for keeping love alive at any age. Third, prioritize health and safety without embarrassment. Doctors don't always bring it up, but that doesn't mean it isn't important. Regular checkups, conversations about medications, and yes, practicing safe sex, are all part of protecting the connection you're building. Far from being awkward, these conversations signal respect and care. Emotional wellness matters just as much. Checking in on stress, loneliness, or anxiety can prevent them from quietly eroding intimacy. Health is not separate from romance. It's the foundation that supports it. And here's the truth that ties it all together. After 60, intimacy is less about sparks and more about warmth that lasts through the night. Sparks are fleeting. Warmth, however, lingers. It's in the comfort of knowing someone understands you. It's in the gentle rhythm of shared routines. It's in the courage to keep learning each other, even after decades. For Marlowe, this shift was life-changing. She and Daniel began by simply talking honestly. They tried new things together, sometimes clumsy, sometimes joyful, always meaningful. And they took care of themselves, not because they feared age, but because they valued their time together. Their connection wasn't built on chasing youthful fire, but on creating a steady glow that carried them through each day and each night. So here's the actionable takeaway. Connection doesn't end after 60, it deepens. But only if you choose to nurture it with openness, curiosity, and care. The foundation is already within you. The choice is to build on it. Marlowe's story began with hesitation. At 67, she thought her chapter on romance had closed. She laughed off dating apps, avoided conversations about intimacy, and told herself, "Those days are behind me." But then, with one small step, a dance class, her world shifted. What started as a tentative move to try something new blossomed into a connection that reignited not only her love life, but her entire sense of self. Because here's the deeper truth. Marlowe didn't just find love again. She found herself. She found her laughter, her voice, her rhythm, her spark. That's the gift of love and intimacy after 60. Doesn't demand you become someone else. It invites you to rediscover the parts of yourself you thought were gone. And that's the heart of this journey. The world often tells seniors that love and sex fade into the background, like old photographs gathering dust. But the reality, they don't fade, they evolve. They take on new colors, new textures, new meanings. As Marlowe said with a smile one evening, it didn't disappear, it just changed its rhythm. The big emotional truth we need to leave with today is this: love and sex after 60 aren't fading embers. They're fires that burn differently, but no less bright. Sometimes the flames are softer, sometimes steadier, but they warm more deeply than ever before. And now it's over to you. What's your story? Have you rediscovered love? Or maybe you're still waiting for that spark? Share it in the comments. Your words could inspire someone else who feels like they're at the end, when in reality they might just be at the beginning. But before you go, I need to ask something important. If this video touched you, even just a little, don't let it sit quietly. Don't just hit like. Hype this video, and every hype pushes these stories higher so more seniors can see them. And remember, you can hype up to 3 videos a week. Make this one of them, because seniors deserve to be heard. And please, share this with someone who needs to remember that passion has no expiration date. A friend, a sibling, even your partner. Sometimes the right story at the right moment can reignite hope. Finally, subscribe. Not because it's a button, but because after 60 our stories don't end. They finally get told. And this channel exists to tell them, with honesty, humor, and heart. So let Marlowe's story remind you. It's never too late. The dance floor is still open. The fire is still burning. And your story, it's still being written.